Hello, how's everyone? Good. Thank you all so much for taking time to, out of your schedule, just to talk with me just a few minutes today. I think for those who know me, will probably tell you I'm pretty practical, no nonsense, but for the most part, very respectful. And when Austin, well, let me first thank you, Dara, and thank you, Austin, for giving me this opportunity to talk. When they asked me about building meaningful relationship, I was like, well, you can't find anybody better than me to talk about it. And then I took some time and I thought about it, that is something that I'm not going to say I mastered, but I've had some tough times here in Mississippi State. I started here in 2008 as the assistant director for the National Panhellenic Council. And from that position, I grew into the assistant dean director of our diversity center. And as of July 1 of last year, I became the interim assistant vice president for multicultural affairs. And I think we all have noticed from time to time that we've seen a lot of campus unrest where students are protesting, faculty is getting involved. And sometimes as staff, it's a little bit more challenging for us because we try to figure out what is our role. And with Black Lives Matter, it's what is my role as a white colleague? What is my role as a black colleague? When do I speak up? Do I speak up? And those are some things I've been faced with within the last 9 months. So by no means do I consider myself to be an expert, but I'm going to take some time to talk with you about my experience. There may be some things I communicate that you may not agree with, and you have every right not to agree. There may be some things that you will agree with. But I will say to you that relationships are relationships, but building meaningful relationships are those relationships that help us when we have death in our family. When we have a sick child. When the office is going through transition and we don't know who we can trust. So I'm not going to try to convince you either way, but there are some things I wanted you to go into this presentation thinking about. As we go through the presentation, I have 3 questions. I'm going to encourage you just to think about those 3 questions as we have our talk today. You know, we have a lot of people to say, oh, I want to save space. I want to save space. I want to save space. I do believe in safe space, but I also believe in giving people brave space where you're able to voice your concern and not be judged. So I'm giving you a brave space. I'm going to be as transparent as I can with you today without using any names, and I'm hoping I don't slip up and say any names, because as an administrator, it's something I have learned. The more transparent I am with my teammates, it makes the job a little bit easier. Because there are things I deal with every day that I don't talk about. There are things that we deal with as managers we don't discuss with our coworkers. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But of all these, the first one is the one I want you to think about the most. What is your role in your office? So, I'm a past high school teacher, so I believe in goals, I believe in learning outcomes, I believe in objectives, so there's just a teacher in me, and I'm not going to read all this verbatim, but there's just some things about me I just feel like I need to tell you. These are some things I'm hoping that you learn from this, and so when we do the evaluations, you can reflect on those. But understanding a working relationship, what they are, what do they mean? How do we feel about those? How do we develop relationships? And those are just a couple things I'm going to ask you to think about. But I think one thing is resolving conflict within the workplace. As an administrator, there are some things I don't think we do a good job with. You can come to me and say, here is what's going on in the office, and some of my colleagues would just hit the surface. I need you to get along. Don't say that to her. Let's be mindful. Instead of putting those individuals together and actually talking through their process. So for the people who work with me, know that when something comes up, I immediately look into it because I understand that we spend most of our time at work, and if we're not happy with work, sometimes that spills over into home and vice versa. So this is what I think a working relationship is. Respect, honesty, integrity with colleagues, boss, and employees. Because have you ever worked in an environment to where you didn't feel that you was respected? You felt like you was underpaid, but you did all the work. You felt like you couldn't trust anybody. Just don't call any names, please. It's a brave space, but I don't want you to call any names. But this is what I think about. I remember some years ago when I was in a department, and I have a pretty good way of making relationships. I've formed some healthy relationships since I've been at Mississippi State, not knowing that God would bless me some 8 years later to be an interim assistant vice president. That was not my thinking when I came here then. But that just shows you how hard work pays off. But I was in his office, and for some reason, I kept missing meetings. I would hear about meetings, but I kept missing them. And I couldn't understand why was I missing the meeting. But all my colleagues had access to my calendar. So what was going on, when people were requesting meetings, they would look at my calendar to see my availability, or when I was in a meeting, and they would schedule meetings during those times. So today we're going to have some real conversation, because the one thing I want you all to know from me is that I know what frustration is. I know the importance of respect is. But when I realized that was going on, it was tough for me. And what made it tougher was that the person I was reporting to was good friends with the person above them, and that person was good friend with the person above them. And when I say good friends, lunch together, hung out on the weekend, they did it all. And so when I communicated my concerns, performance appraisal time came around, and guess what? I went down 1.5, 2 points, because I spoke up. And with me speaking up, it turned into, you're such a bad person. Well, those are not the exact words, but I was a bad person. And so at that point, I knew then that I had to make some decisions. And so I knew the importance of building trust. And these are some of the characteristics that I came up with and that I learned that I had to do. It was not trusting the individuals. I had to trust myself that I was making the right decision. Because a lot of times we look at everybody else and say what they're not doing, but we don't take a close look at ourselves. And so I just began to say, Cedric, you just got to trust yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. Because one of the things that we have, you don't have to agree with this, it's tough for us to say, I'm wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. So what I did, I went to this individual, I said, it's apparent that I've offended you, but I've gone to you multiple times. And I'm a note taker. If you don't document, you start documenting. And I had proof every time I reached out to this individual. So when I went back to meet with that person's supervisor, I said, here's the times that I tried to meet with this person. Here's the time I tried to meet with you. So with me being honest, it turned into me versus them, plus 2 other people. And so everybody was all about, how do we handle Cedric? And we're going to get into this a little later in the presentation, but I want you to hold on to, how do we handle that person who may be a little bit different than we are? So dependability, respect, and integrity. Integrity is really tough, because it's so easy for me to say, and I have a couple of my colleagues here with me, it's so easy for me to say, Rachel made that mistake. Hannah said that. But what I've learned to do is to say, at the end of the day, I'm the supervisor. I take responsibility. I don't care where I go in life, who I manage. And I tell people this often, I'm a husband and I'm a father first. That's the most important job to me. But when I come to my office, I try to treat my colleagues with respect. And so everything I'm saying here is that when my staff go out and say things, my hope is that they'll say he's very trustworthy. He's honest. But he's a man of integrity. So those are a couple of things that I want you to focus on today. In this presentation, this PowerPoint is just a way for us just to navigate the conversation. Because I felt like it was imperative if I did have something up here to keep me from just rambling off and you all just be like, what is this man talking about? Attitude and respect with diverse backgrounds. I think we all have important jobs on campus, but there are some days I feel like I have the toughest job of all. It's because I'm working with people from all walks of life, different experiences, different backgrounds. And people seem to think that their way is the right way. And being a man of color, going into a room with majority individuals at time, having to be the one to say, have you thought about it this way? Have you thought about women are just as intelligent as men? Have you taken time to look at international students? Have you just thought about that? And getting them to just understand, respect that, the backgrounds. Because we can learn so much from one another. Because if you got all like minds in the office, what do you think is going to happen? Nothing. I mean, you're just going to continue to do things the way that you've been doing them. Encourage others to share their challenges. And when I say share their challenges, I'm simply meaning if you have a problem in the office, be able to talk to someone about it. And when I say problem, I don't know how to call out. You'll be surprised that people get mad at folks because they don't have a long-distance code or they don't know how to use a copier. Can y'all relate to that? It turns into us versus them. I'm taking something very serious and I'm trying to make light of it is because my hope is that you all can see yourself somewhere in this presentation and you can see your role and how you could do some things better. When we confront others, that can be a big problem. Because where I can take information and I can process it and say, how do we move forward? There are some other people who I know can take that same information, the same tone in which it was delivered, and they process it totally different. He's rude. He's disrespectful. He don't care. He don't understand. He act like he don't understand what it's like being at this level. And sometimes we put those labels on ourselves. We put people on pedestals opposed to us just saying that individual. And so that's why I'm very intentional with what I do, is that there is nothing that I would not ask the people on my team to do that I wouldn't do. If it's working late, I'm going to work late. If it's coming on a weekend, I'm coming on a weekend. May bring my boys with me, but we're going to be there. But I think what's most important is, from this, is just understanding that we have to lead by example. And sometimes leading by example can be hard. We have to look at the big picture opposed to looking at one isolated incident. Now, how to maintain a working relationship. Transparency is very important. Transparency is very important. Sometimes I struggle with how transparent to be. Should I be, to be honest? It's because there's one thing about it. We spend most of our time together at work. And there are times I know information, but I can't share it at that moment. But I tell it when I think the time is right. And the time is right before that email goes out, to be honest. Because like I said earlier, everybody can't process the information the same. But do you all know this person who knows every piece of gossip on campus? Who you can say, did you know Malafa down the street did such and such? And it's, girl, I knew that too, and I heard this here. Do you know people like that? And so that's why I like being transparent, because I want to be able to talk about, well, that's not my version of the story. Let's talk through this. Do you really think Mississippi State made this decision because they didn't like this population of people when we're the leading institution in the state of Mississippi? Oh, I never thought about it like that. Do you really think when Dr. Keenum makes statements about whatever it may be, do you really think he hadn't thought, he has not consulted with his exec cabinet? Trust me, he's thought through that process. So, appreciate others. And when I say appreciate others, I'm serious when I make this statement. There are a lot of times with the people I work with, they do such good work. When I send the work out, oh my God, Cedric, that is so good. No, Rachel did that. No, Hannah did that. No, Rashida took care of that. Because guess what? When someone asks me to do it again, I may not know how to do it. So I'm going to give credit where it's due, to be honest with you. So the point I'm making is let people know when you appreciate them. And some of these things are very, very small, but you have no idea how people perceive things. And that's why it's important when we have a diverse background, we can have a better understanding and appreciation for people. I make this statement often, and sometimes people look at me and frown when I say this. I say, I can only think like a 40-year-old black man. They were like, what? What are you saying that for? What you mean? I can only think from my experiences. And we need to have conversations about our experiences. So I'm not pretending to be anyone that I'm not. I only know how it is to be Cedric. And when you can have a better understanding of Cedric, guess what? You have a better understanding of why I think the way that I think, why I process the way that I think. Be positive. It can be very hard at times. But what I do is I think about the two little boys I have at home. I think about that is because I try to put myself in other people's shoes. And I'm a first-generation college student. I have 7 brothers. My oldest brother dropped out of high school. My success comes from my challenges. I did not allow what I had back in Oklahoma, Mississippi to define me. And when people say, oh, I never knew that, I never thought about it that way. I don't walk around with tears on my face or with my burdens on my back. Those things motivate me. And so when we talk about being positive, I think about there are so many other young students here who went through some of the same things I've gone through, and they just need somebody just to listen to. Because sometimes as professionals, we think we have to do what? We got to fix it. We got to fix it. No, guess what? Sometimes people just want you to listen. And if you just listen long enough, they answer their own question. And it took me a couple years to realize that people just want their voice heard. And if you provide them that space, guess what? They're going to listen, they're going to hear, and they're going to answer their question, but they're going to see the possibility of you being that mentor for them. Number 4. Manage your boundaries. It's a tough one, isn't it? And this is how I handle this. This is what I do. I know my role. And once you know your role, you know your boundaries. It sounds very simple, but it's not. Because we got that person in our office who knows everything. But knowing your boundaries is knowing, and if you don't remember anything else I tell you today, remember knowing your boundaries is being very careful with casual conversation. And when I say casual conversation, meaning that Hannah and I, we're in the office, we're talking, and, oh, you know, Hannah, Rachel really makes me mad. And I don't understand why Rachel does what she do. And then Rachel walks in. It turns into, hey, Rachel, how are you, Rachel? I'm so glad to see you, Rachel. Have y'all ever experienced that before? Okay. And then as the manager, what kind of message does that send to Hannah? Because it goes back to trust. Because my parents raised me that the dog who brings a bone carries a bone. So what we have to do is find within ourselves to know our boundaries. And knowing our boundaries meaning that you have to think about, what am I bringing to this relationship? Why does Sally feels so comfortable talking to me about Jan? Why does the student worker feel so comfortable coming and talk to me about the director? Those are the kind of things we need to think about when we talk about managing a relationship. Because a lot of the problem that we have and we experience, we bring upon ourselves. So that's why I like these series, because it puts you in a position to where you can think outside your box. And you can hear other people's experiences. Avoid gossiping. That goes back to my casual conversation. I live life this way. Today is you. Tomorrow it could be me. And just knowing that life itself brings challenges, and we don't know how we're going to respond to any situation. But what I try to do, is think about it this way. If I was in that person's shoes, how would I feel? You know, whether it's such and such daughter pregnant and she in the 10th grade, such and such husband is cheating on her. Those are the kind of things we talk about. We think there's something talking about somebody. But we can't do that in the workplace. I mean, you can, but think about what kind of environment are you creating? And when I talk about being practical, I'm not someone who had to get up and use a lot of big words and dance around, because I want you to understand that I, as a professional, go through the same things that you go through. But as I grew, I learned the hard way. And the hard way was, in some respect, I felt like I had to be this person's friend. I felt like I had to go out for whatever we were going out for. Or I felt like this is my boss, so I have to do it this way. But I quickly realized, that's their way. That's not my way. And I've learned to create my own way. Actively listen. Talked about this earlier. Just listen. Provide a space for people just to come in and talk. Because if I take a poll right now, every person in here can say, I'm currently dealing with, I just recently dealt with, or on the arising, I can foresee a problem. And you think about it, we spend more time at work than we do with our families. In some respect, we share more with our colleagues than we do with our partners. Would you agree? Because I know as a husband, there are some things I just feel like with my wife, if I tell her this, she's going to go into worry mode. And that's not saying my wife is a bad person. It's just that I don't want to put her in and especially now, put her in a position where she's worried about anything. And so we have to pick and we have to choose. And so just being able to listen to one another and just being able to value one another. So, what does conflict look like to you? I didn't tell you this at the beginning, but this is your part of the program, where if you feel comfortable, let's just talk about it, and then I'm going to go further off into our presentation. You don't have to say any names, and if you want to talk about it, you don't have to. It's because when I talk about brave space, I want people to feel comfortable just to talk about their experiences. I asked Austin earlier, I said, Austin, how honest do you want me to be? Because there's one thing I have learned working here at Mississippi State, which is a fine institution. Sometimes like I said earlier, we hit surfaces. We're just not going to take a whole lot of time to see what's really going on. So, what does conflict look like to you all? Anyone? Okay, no pressure. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Can you go 2 slides back?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. 2 slides back.
Right there.
Yes, ma'am.
When 6 starts going into 5 and 4, it starts causing conflict, I think.
It does. It can. Because we think it's okay to gossip with whomever's in the office, and we think it's okay to listen to people when they say things that may not even be true. Because and I didn't put this in the presentation, but this is something I've learned. I find out more about who I am as a person on social media. Seriously. I got off Facebook about 3 years ago because I was making decisions, leading the university in a different direction, and for some of the people who didn't like that, they resorted to Facebook to say how much they disliked me. And not only did they say what they didn't like about me, they felt peace in doing it. And then when I would see that person, hey, Cedric, how are you? How are you doing? And I knew at that point, you know what? I had to make some separation. I was putting myself in a position to where I was allowing myself to be hurt. I took ownership. Why am I going to Facebook to see what people are saying about me? I can't do that. So is Facebook so important to me to where I have to listen and see that? No. But when you stand up for what is right and you make unpopular decisions, people have the tendency they'll change. If you apply pressure, you'll see how people really are. And applying pressure simply means make an unpopular decision. Because when I make decisions within my offices, I look at the big picture. I'm not looking at one person and saying, I got to make this decision because I want Rachel to be happy. And I'm just using that as an example, Rachel. I'm not saying that. But I got to think about, as my students persist, I got to think about what is the next class looking for. I can't make decisions just based on every class of student that come to Mississippi State. So you're right. But that boundary is very important. And you all, I cannot stress to you casual conversation, especially if you next in line for a promotion and you send the gospel with everybody. And when you're elevated, guess what they're thinking? What do you think people are saying? Okay, this is another part of the program you can speak out on. How did she get that position? She's a brown nose. Who does she think she is? I've been here 5 years. She's only been here 6 months. Who does she know? Who does she call? But we sitting down, we were in the Starbucks together getting coffee, and as we walk back across campus, we talking about sister such and such and this person, that person, as we walk across campus. To you, it may not be anything big, but trust me, been there, done that. People show you who they are if you elevate it. If you don't believe me, keep living. Keep working. I learned this I don't think I'm an old man, but I think I've learned this at a pretty decent age. I got about 25 more years I could work, I believe. But the point I'm making is, and Ms. Hill, thank you for sharing that. Are there any other thoughts? And I also learned this too about, and this was really hard for me. I had some people who didn't like the way I was doing some things, and they decided to report me in a way, and that bothered me. Because in my mind, I'm trying to figure out the nerve of you to do that. But I realized quickly, it's not about me. It's about misery loves company. And so when you can separate yourself from the situation and look at it from another lens, it makes this experience so much better. And the last thing I'm going to say about this before we move on is that once a person show you who they are, believe them. I'll say this one more time. Once a person show you who they are and what your role is in a relationship, believe them. And that's hard for us. Because we want to come to work, we want to get along, we want to have a healthy relationship, but everybody's not happy about your success. Everybody's not excited about your growth. Everybody's not excited about your role. Everybody is not excited about your relationship that you have with people across campus. To some of you, you may be saying, this is nothing. To others, you may be saying, I never thought about it that way. Because if we just take some time and we just think about things, they're a lot simpler than what they're really simple. We make them complicated because we want to do number 5 a whole lot. But we talked about what it looked like Any other thoughts on what it looks like? Okay. We did 2 slides. We did one for coworkers, and we felt like it was important to do one for leaders. So when we talk about conflict resolution among coworkers, one of the things I had to ask myself is there really a problem? Or am I just perceiving things the wrong way? We can come to work having a bad day, and just because we're having a bad day, we think everybody else is having a bad day. And we make things, we create these problems in our mind. But the next thing, we have to understand the situation. One of the things that I try to do, and I try to live my life this way, is understand the situation. Because I alluded to this earlier about life. Life is going to happen. And I've been and worked in different departments, and people will have 2 vehicles, some kind of way of vehicles in the shop, and they come to work late, and you ask them, why are you late? And they get all mad at you by asking why they late. And they just could have easily just said, hey, my husband's car's in the shop, so I'm going to be a few minutes late. That's just opening up and just telling people why things are the way that they are. I'm not trying to get in your business, but if you tell me basically what you're going through, I will have a better understanding of working with you. Talk with your coworker. Listen carefully to understand. Number 5 is important. Control your emotions. That's a good one. And higher ed is male dominant, no secret. And sometimes when colleagues who happen to be women, if they cry, does it mean that they're weak? No. They express their emotions differently. So I tell people, you have every right to cry. But understand when you cry in front of students and when you cry, what kind of message are you sending to other people? I tell students I cry. I laugh. I hurt. Because I want people to understand I'm just like you. Because sometimes when we see titles and we see people, we see someone who is not relatable or who is not touchable in some respect. Share perspectives is very important. That's why it's important for me as I talk with you today for you to get to know who I am outside of my title or outside of what I do at Mississippi State. Because when students come to me and talk about struggle and I don't understand or in their mind I've made it, I said, let's go back 20 years. Let me tell you what struggle looked like. Let me tell you about my oldest brother dropping out of high school and my mom coming to me saying, it is your responsibility to graduate high school and be an example for your younger brothers. And there's a lot of days I wanted to quit. A lot of days I just wanted to give up. But I knew that if I gave up, I was going to send a message to my brothers and my cousins and other people that, hey, it's too hard. It's too challenging. Positive statements. And when I say stop office campaigning, what do you think I mean? Somebody said it. Gossiping. And when I say office campaigning, that's just a pretty way for saying gossiping, where you go to everybody, Cedric made me mad today because I asked him, could I be off, and he told me no, and I cannot stand him. Do you not know I just talked to Mandy about what Cedric said to me, and I don't like him? Did he do that to you? I know you've been here the longest, so what do you think about this here? And did he do that to you? And you know what? I talked to Sally, Mandy, and everybody else about it, and guess what? What do you think about him? He get on my nerve. And what do you think about him? Does that look familiar? But we have to think about what kind of message are we sending. Office campaigning can hurt you more than what you realize. Because when it comes promotion time, promotion time or performance appraisal time, or better yet, when another opportunity presents itself at the university, and now this is tough for me, but I've learned to do this over the last 5 years, I'm not sending you somebody who's causing me problems. I'm not going to do that to my colleagues. Some people will give you a good reference just to get rid of you. I'm serious. But I'm thinking about, I don't need that burden to have, I don't need that person to have that burden. That's just how I am as a manager. I believe in being honest. Because why would I make that recommendation for you to get to hire this person, and there may be someone 6 months, a year from now, who's a really good employee who can come to your office and enhance what you have going on. But in your mind, you're thinking, oh, no, who knew? You send me someone who seems to think this is their responsibility. We laugh and we joke about it, but that's just some things for you to think about. Because it's important. Because I call references to say, tell me, how is this person in certain environments, in certain situations? So it's important to make for sure, when you think it's okay to campaign about other people, what kind of message are you sending about yourself? And we all have them within our offices. We all have them within our division. So it's no secret. But it's one of those things where we just got to take ownership for it. And going back to my original question, what is your role in your office? You have got to decide what do you want people to say about you. And I learned a long time ago that it's not what people say about me, but is it true? I've also learned that you may not like Cedric Gathings, but you will respect the position. And that's not being arrogant. That's what we have to keep in mind. Cedric just happens to be the person in that position. So therefore, you need to respect the position. Because I'm always, y'all leaving me? Did I say something wrong? Oh, okay, good. I got a little nervous about you leaving. But and once you take on that mindset, it makes it so much easier. Because I pick and choose battles. There are some battles not even worth fighting. I'm just like, you know what? I can't help the way that you feel. If you really feel like I'm that way, that's your business. As long as I'm making the right decision and I'm leading my unit in the right way, I'm fine with it. I can't be worried about what people say about me. For my leaders in here, department heads, assistant directors, whomever, all this is Cedric's opinion. I believe in addressing issues immediately. That's me personally. Because my grandma used to say, don't let stuff tarry. I didn't know what that meant some years ago, but now being in this role, I understand what tarry means. You just can't let it keep going. Because guess what? You get with this person, and the story changed when it get to you. By the time it get to you, it's changed. By the time it get to you, it changed. And by the time it get to you, it's changed. By the time it get to you, you hate everybody on this road. Because some kind of way the story has gotten twisted. So, and when I say address it immediately, I simply mean by saying, at any point, if there's a problem, if there's a concern that you have, please talk to me about it. I can't control how you feel, but if you don't mind, I've noticed some difference in behavior here in the office. So let's talk through that. And it goes back to that brave space. We want people to feel safe, but want them brave enough to come and talk to us about whatever the situation may be. I do believe in listening to all parties, because when you call one person in and the other person see the door closed and you in there, they automatically think you're siding with that person. Just perception. May not be any validity to it, but that's just how they see things. Set a meeting up to discuss the issue with all parties. Now, what I believe in doing, I don't believe in meeting with A and B and then bring them together. Well, it depends on the situation. I just like to say, hey, y'all, let's talk. Let's talk about what your concerns are. And also, as a manager, my team of people would tell you, I always ask this question, is there anything I can do better? Because if there's a problem, I've asked you, what are your thoughts? Now, if you come back and say, well, you never provided a space for me, that's your fault. You're not being very honest. And when I say if there's a problem, I don't need you to tell me what you think I need to hear. You need to tell me the truth. If you feel like I'm being unfair, tell me. If you feel like there's a potential for biases, tell me. because I'm human. As good as I think I am with leading my areas, I'm still human. So, of course, number 4 is very important. Don't show sides. We cannot do that. And promote teamwork. And when I use the word promote teamwork, I strategically put people in place for different various reasons. Have you working together? You don't know why I got you working together. Because I believe that putting people together who probably wouldn't have worked together, that teach them a lot about the other person's personality. Because I hired this guy about 3 years ago who, when we hired him, I said, within 2.5, 3 years, you'll be ready to leave Mississippi State because I'm going to teach you everything you need to know. Within 2.5 years, he became assistant dean at Cornell University, doing some of the same work that we do today. I'm not saying that to brag, but there's one thing about me. If you give me an opportunity, I'm going to showcase you how to handle whatever the situation may be. Because I believe in being a mentor. We're co-workers, but this is a mentor relationship. It's a give and take relationship. It's meaningful to me. And Rachel would tell you, make all the mistakes that you can make with me. Make those mistakes with me. So when you get out at another university, people won't look at Mississippi State and think, what in the world did y'all produce here? But I say that jokingly, but I want her to feel comfortable talking to me. And so providing that space again. Acknowledge progress. Good job. I can see the growth. I like the way you handled that situation. Hey, you did a good job with that. Let's look at it from these lenses. I didn't say, well, you made another mistake. What are you doing? Let's do it this way. What I said was, good job, but let's look at it from these lenses. Let's keep this in mind when we're making decisions. Same message, different tone. And sometimes we can make it so much about us to where we just, it's all about us. We don't care about anybody else in our unit. It's all about us. And so as leaders, what we have to do is sometimes sit our own feelings to the side and do what's best for the team. That's what I learned to do. Because I remember when my wife was working at this university, and she would come home some days just all frustrated and just frustrated. And I couldn't understand, what's wrong? And she was pregnant with our second child. And I didn't realize how much stress could have on you until we went through that. She went on bed rest at 3.5 months. So we had roughly 5 months, well, I did, of having a better appreciation for her doing the laundry, a better appreciation for her having supper already, having the meal ready, or knowing what she was going to cook, or what my oldest son was going to wear to school, or what it's like going to the grocery store. That's not something I had to deal with. But it took that experience. I learned 2 things from that. 1, I learned to appreciate her even more. 2, I learned how to be a better supervisor, especially working with women. Because there's some things there's something I don't think about as a man. And when she went through that, I was like, I never thought about it. But I made a promise to myself that, Hannah, if someone on my staff were pregnant, I would look at things from a different lens. I'm thinking, oh, you're tired. You're running late. It's just things that we don't think about. So as a manager, we have to think about things from a 50-foot lens opposed to a 10. And sometimes we just make it all about us and we don't think about the people that we're working with. Now, my next slide was talking about important things to know about conflict. Conflict is going to happen. I don't care where you go own your own business, it's going to happen. And especially you hire your relatives. Because it's something about family. We think we know how to run a business better than you. And so knowing that conflict is going to be a part of the experience. And not all conflict is bad conflict. Because I believe that when we can have a disagreement or we can conflict about things, you can bring a whole new perspective to how I was thinking. So that's why I think it's very imperative that being in this interim role, as I talk with different groups, one thing I try to stress to them, hire people who are different than you. I'm not telling you who to hire, but hire people who are going to come with a different perspective. And when you bring people from a different perspective, they can help you understand that other cultural or that other situation a lot better than what you would have, if you thought of. It's important to listen to people. And when you're listening to them, you're not talking. Have you ever just been somewhere where you doing, a person is talking, they talking and you talking and you just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? Can y'all relate to that? And it's almost like, okay, there's no winner here. And so what I'm saying to you, when people come to you and they talk to you, understand just to listen. I can't stress to you the importance of just listening opposed to always having an opinion. Just listen to what these people have to say. Now, the benefits of a meaningful relationship is your work environment is so much better. When we can come to work and everybody getting along, that makes things so much easier. Because if I can walk in and I can have a bad day and I can say to Vice President for Student Affairs or the Provost and say, today is just not a good day. If you don't mind, can I just have about 30 minutes to myself? I tell people often that when I get frustrated, you know what I do? I get irritated about something, because we all get that way. I walk around the drill field by myself. Because what I need, I'm allowing myself time to process what I'm going through. Because if I'm making a decision based on emotions, it may take me a lifetime to fix it. And we don't ever think about that. So I have learned over the years, and I have a lot of busy days, where I'm in meetings from 8:30 in the morning to 4 o'clock some afternoons, all day. And I'm processing from one meeting to the next meeting. How do we handle this? How do we deal with that? How do we do this? How do we do that? Because Dr. Kingdom is expecting for me to help him make the right decisions. Then if I go and make a decision based off of my emotions, guess what's going to happen? We're going to make national news. Because I have my own way of thinking at times and how I think certain things should be. But I've learned it's not about Cedric. It's about what's going to be best for the students that we have here in place. Your career is more developed with meaningful relationships. I tell students often, if I can teach you how to navigate the system, you will be successful. I hear people say you have to learn how to play the game. And I think we all know when you play games, there's a winner and there's a loser. But if I can teach you how to navigate conversation, I don't care where you go in life, you will be successful. Meaning, when I say successful, meaning that you're going to do your part. And your part, you may not get what you want, but at least you will be able to articulate what you think and not be emotional about the situation. And the more developed you are, it gives you a better opportunity to grow. Because we all want people to help us look good and to be successful. Am I right? So we're looking for more developed people. And we work in a more enjoyable environment. I said this earlier about we spend most of our time at work. And when things are not good at home, things are not good at work, we're not good to anyone. So I'm not trying to pick on anybody, get in anybody's business, but those are just kind of things we need to think about, especially as leaders. So I don't care what you have going on at home. You can't let it spill over into work. because the expectation is for you to lead this department forward. And if you can't do that, you need to tell someone. Because people can tell when we're having bad days. They know it. So that's why I believe in just being upfront and honest and just, hey, you know, today's just today. And so we have to be able to talk those things and make things more enjoyable. And it leads me to my very last slide, which is, are there any questions? I know I did a good job, but you all can at least ask me one question. I'm joking. Any question? Anybody have any thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor's perspective, how do you get your employees, as you said, you have to understand your boundaries. How do you get your employees to understand their boundaries?
One of the things I do is I'll just make the statement like I alluded to earlier, where you are gossiping about this person, understand that you have children too, or understand that there's something called life, and we don't know what life is going to throw at us. And so while we're talking about this person, we need to think about ways to support them. Now, my relationship is different. I have a relationship with the people that I work with. Not saying that you don't, but I have an open relationship where we can talk about everything. Because in my world, if one of my employees ache, I'm aching. That's how I am as a manager, and getting them to look at the big picture. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah, just communicate. Yeah, just communication. Being a good listener, making yourself available. Yes.
How do you manage to stay positive if you are in a pretty toxic?
I understand that it's not about you, and that misery loves company. And I don't care who you work with and where you go, everybody's not going to like you. So you have to understand what your role is, and you create your own day. It's all about you. Because we can't give people the autonomy to control us. And sometimes what we do is that when we have all these outside distractions, we're giving them control. And I have learned, regardless of how you feel as a person, that's you. I can't allow the way that you feel to affect me and how I manage. And that can sometimes be very tough, but you have to understand what is it that you want. And that's why with my family, I promise you, I have 3 people at home depending on daddy to come home and to provide a safe space for them. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, I've worked with a lot of women over the years, and women tend to complain about each other a lot, and things like that. I have tried to find ways in the past to exit that conversation, because I guess same thing you said, put yourself in the other person's shoes. I wouldn't want to know someone thinking
Right.
about me, obviously. So, what have you found for good ways?
You know, and this may be a little biased. I think sometimes when we work for the opposite sex, it makes it a little bit different. You know, it's a little bit easier in my opinion. But one thing, I've had some issues like that, and I have addressed it in staff meetings. I would just say, your thoughts are your thoughts, your opinion is your opinion, but when it comes to work, my expectation is for you to do your job and stop campaigning about who you don't like. And if that can't happen, we need to make some other decisions. And I do that very early in the conversation. And I document. So when it comes to performance appraisal time, not put it over their head, but I say, here's some things that we've talked about in the past. And let's talk through how I can help you. And then I'll go as far as asking the question, what can I do to make your experience a little bit better here in the office? Because it's apparent that there are some things that are not quite right, so how can I help you? And then eventually, within time, most people get it. But it's when you have the campaigning going on, because if you can stop the gossiping, it makes it easier. And I take it day by day. I've taken it at least day by day, and knowing that eventually it's going to get better. And I don't take anything personal. That's one thing I want to tell you too. Don't take anything personal. Yes, ma'am.
If you find yourself in a negative role, you know, the light bulb comes on because of this workshop, how do you clean it up?
Just talk to that person. I'm big on communication, you all. I'm big on going straight to the source and seeing how we can move forward in this situation. And that can sometimes be very difficult, and it could put people in a very difficult place. And especially as a manager, when you have so many other people watching you. Because you have to think, if I do this for employee A, what is B, C, and D thinking? And sometimes people seem to think, if A can get by with it, I can get by with it too. So I believe in being fair, and I also believe in being consistent in how I handle situations. And I do know every office is going to be different. That's why we're going back to those 3 questions I asked you earlier. What is your role? How do you deal with it? How do you define it? And I'm hoping from this presentation that I've helped you some. But our conversation does not have to end here. I would love an opportunity to continue this conversation. And sometimes we feel like when we go through an hour, 45-minute presentation, we have all the answers. We don't. Because some of the things that we're dealing with have been in our areas for 5, 10 years, and we've only been there a couple years, and we're trying to fix it within 2 years. We can't do that. It's going to take some time. But not only is it going to take time, it's going to take people who are willing to move forward. I've also gotten to the point in some situations to where I can't change the way that you think. I will continue to move forward with the people who want to be led forward, and then eventually these other people, either they're going to come on or they're going to make some decisions about leaving the university. But as I go through that, I'm making for sure that you have a safe space. I'm making for sure that you have a voice. But I'm also going to move forward with those individuals who want to go forward. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.